a Noble Media Group member.
The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
6,000 years ago, man invented the wheel. 5,000 years later, he invented the printing press. 460 years later, he would fly. 70 years later, he would step on the moon. And 8 years later, he would send a spacecraft beyond our solar system. Today, we have computers which can think for themselves and robots that can dance. Properly utilized, today's technologies can bring an end to poverty, hunger, and even the need to work, or to make bombs that will end all life on Earth. Will we destroy ourselves or come together?
It is now 85 seconds to midnight. This is the closest the world has ever been to midnight.
Join Joe Carvin as he explores these questions, because mankind is on the hinge of history.
Welcome back to Living at the Hinge of History. Brian, good to see you today. Yesterday, we began to introduce this concept, and today I'd like to continue to talk about how we came up with the title for the show and thinking behind the concept at the hinge of history. But before I talk about that, I really like to ask you if you've seen any hinge of history revelations over the last couple of days. I think you sort of alluded to one yesterday.
I did. So there's we talked about this dancing robot thing, and we're going to put a video of it up right now. When you look at this and look at the change and the fact that they're dancing, I mean, yeah, that's cool and neat. Everybody enjoys that, right? I mean, it's kind of funny. Yep. But how does that affect us as humanity and mankind? Well, that's where it gets a little bit more important, because within, 12 months, I mean, arguably 24 months, because we don't know when they started production and research on these different robots, you can see the difference between how these robots just danced between two presentations of 12 months apart. And so it kind of goes back to our point, Joe, about how quickly this stuff is going. And I'm going to be, again, a little bit of the pessimist. Are we ready for this? Are we ready for, not funny dancing robots, but are we ready for robots that literally outthink mankind and can do things that mankind, a person, can't even do?
Well, okay. The crystal clear answer today is no way are we ready for it. The reason for this show is to prepare mankind for this kind of change. So, for example, in fact, it's interesting. My whole view of the world, and we'll see this video in the future, Brian. Elon Musk was interviewed by the Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak. Rishi said, I'm concerned AI is going to take jobs. And Elon thought for a second. He says, well, it's hard to predict exactly when this is going to happen, but sometime in the not too distant future, AI will do everything for everyone.
Hey, Joe, let's put that video up too, real quick, if we can. A little piece of that
good.
video.
We'll put it up. Yep, we'll get that video up. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's
good. We'll get it. Yeah. Fantastic. Yes, this video changed my life.
When I do interviews or talk to people out and about in this job about AI, the thing that comes up most actually is probably not so much the stuff we've been talking about, but jobs. It's right. What does AI mean for my job? Yeah. Is it going to mean that I don't have a job, or my kids are not going to have a job? Now, my answer as a policymaker, as a leader, is actually AI is already creating jobs, and you can see that in the companies that are starting. Also, the way it's being used is a little bit more as a co-pilot necessarily versus replacing the person. There's still human agency, but it's helping you do your job better, which is a good thing. And as we've seen with technological revolutions in the past, clearly there's change in the labor market, the amount of jobs. I was quoting an MIT study today that they did a couple of years ago. Something like 60% of the jobs at that moment didn't exist 40 years ago, so hard to predict. And my job is to create an incredible education system, whether it's at school, whether it's retraining people at any point in their career, because ultimately if we've got a skilled population, they'll be able to keep up with the the pace of change and have a good life. But that it's still a concern. And what would your kind of observation be on AI and the impact on labor markets and people's jobs, and how they should feel about that as they think about this?
Well, I think we are seeing the most disruptive force in history here. Where we have for the first time, we will have for the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human. And that, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what that moment is, but there will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything. So I don't know if that makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. That's why I say if you wish for a magic genie, that gives you any wishes you want, and there's no limit. You don't have this three wish limit nonsense. You just have as many wishes as you want. It's both good and bad. One of the challenges in the future will be, how do we find meaning in life if you have a magic genie that can do everything you want? I do think it's hard. When there's new technology, it tends to usually follow an S curve. In this case, we're going to be on the exponential portion of the S curve for a long time, and you'll be able to ask for anything. It won't be, and we won't have universal basic income. We'll have universal high income. So in some sense, it'll be somewhat of a leveler or an equalizer, because really, I think everyone will have access to this magic genie, and you'll be able to ask any question. It'll certainly be good for education. It'll be the best tutor you could, and the most patient tutor. Sit there all day. But there will be no shortage of goods and services. We'll be an age of abundance.
This video changed my view of the world. In fact, what I really want to talk about here is superabundance. We need to talk about the challenges. We need to talk about the downside. But the consensus amongst AI futurists is 15-20% game over, 80-85% superabundance. So let's take that 80-85 to 90-95. That's our goal here.
All right.
Exactly right. So when you see that video, it's November 2023. And in that video, Elon says, we're not going to have universal basic income. We're going to have universal high income. So if you want to work, you can, but there'll be no need to work. Now, I've followed Elon religiously since then till today. And in our book, The Great Transition, which we'll put on our website as well, you watch his thinking and his thinking evolve on this. So he becomes more and more concrete on how this can be achieved. And Brian, you hit the nail on the head with your robots. So ultimately, what he's come to the conclusion is that we're going to have one robot for every human being. And we're going to have 8 to 10 billion robots in 10 to 20 years. And those robots will be informed by AI. So they'll be more competent than any human being ever could be. And those robots will do everything for everyone. So this world of sustainable superabundance is technologically feasible. What we're going to talk about is how we get from here to there. And I guess there's another point in terms of the pace of change that we want to talk about a little bit today. And ultimately, we've had difficulty keeping up with Moore's law for the last 50 years. We've talked about it. That's where computing capacity doubles every 2 years. And over 10 years, that's a 32-fold increase. Well, right now, we're going to look at a chart again, Brian, where if computing capacity doubles every 6 months, as it is, that will be a millionfold increase versus 32 over the next 10 years. So buckle your seatbelts, get ready for change. And I guess the final point I would make, another great insight into the book. And I'm telling you, if you get a chance, look at the book. You're not going to hear from me. You're going to hear from the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang. And this is the insight we got last year, Brian, where ultimately there's 4 types of AI. There's the old AI where you had Google search. You have the new big change with ChatGPT, generative AI. The end of last year and this year's agentic AI. But what he really talked about is robotic AI. And that's what you just saw there. So that when you merge those flipping robots with AI, deep AI, then ultimately you can begin to envision a future where we can just sit back, let the robots work for us, and take care of everything.
Yeah. Well, so again, I think that that's a wonderful view of it, and hopefully that's what happens. But I'm still in that 10 to 15% right now of I guess that after the last 100 years when we fought 2 world wars and so forth, I'm just worried about people using this technology, Joe, to dominate others instead of making it so that everybody prospers. And I've got that a little bit of that pessimistic, but you're winning me over. I will say you're
Oh, hold
winning
on,
me over
hold
on
on,
the
hold on, hold on.
optimistic
I
part of
want to
it.
be clear. I want to be clear. In fact, James Martin, one of the guys we talk about, we'll talk about again some more. The two great British authors that really began to anticipate this at the turn of the century. Sir Martin Rees wrote a book called Our Final Century, and he talked about the dangers from emerging technologies, nanotechnology and others. And he said, this is Sir Martin Rees, Lord Rees is the former president of the Royal Society of Britain. He was the royal astronomer for Britain.
Hmm.
The Royal Society of Science is the same institution that Isaac Newton used to lead. So
Hmm.
Sir Martin Rees, Lord Rees, shared that institution. He said that ultimately we're living through the most important time in history since the Big Bang.
Wow.
13.8 billion years. So if we get, and so he talked about our risks. He said we were 50-50 to reach the year 2050, 2100. But he didn't stop there. This is what I love about Lord Rees. I have a huge admiration for Lord Rees. In fact, he's one of the people I dedicated my book to. And he created the Center for the Study of Existential Risk to Humanity after he wrote the book.
Hmm.
And ultimately, when he created that center, Brian, there are more studies on snowboarding than on existential risk. So I'm hopeful. And if we left to where we are today, we can't make it. There's no way we're ready today. But then Sir James Martin, another fantastic British technologist, who ultimately wrote a book called The Wired Society in the 1970s, was anticipating technological trends for the next 30 years, made a gazillion dollars, and contributed $150 million to Oxford University to create the Oxford Martin School of the 21st century. And basically, he said, ultimately, and then he wrote this book, and he wrote probably the best book you can read on these topics in
Hmm.
2006. He talked about the meaning of the 21st century. We want to give meaning to the 21st century. It's really down to us. It's down to those of us alive today that are going to have to navigate this transition. He called for the creation of a transition generation. And he said, imagine if you're on a whitewater raft and you start in the 17, 18, and things are going slow. Then all of a sudden the pace of change, accelerating, nanotechnology, AI, robotics, and ultimately it's up to us to come together in an unprecedented way to use technology for the good of humanity. If we can do that, now look, I'm going to be very straightforward. I'm 71 years old on Sunday, last Sunday. My fervent goal is to bring China and the United States together, the two most powerful nations in the world. We have to find a way to bring China and the United States together. Ultimately, if we can bring people to people exchanges, that's what we're doing. And again, I can tell you about my favorite school in China, where if you go to the school, Brian, I think I've mentioned this before, but carved out in the hedges in English is the word love.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine a U.S. school having carved out in the hedges the word love in Chinese characters. We have an extraordinary principal who I love dearly, who leads that school, and she asks her teachers to teach with a loving heart. My biggest challenge when I was in China for the last 36 days was if you give a Chinese person 1 ounce of hospitality, they're going to give you 10 back.
Hmm.
I said, you keep inviting me to, now that's the people to people level. We know the government challenges. But I've had the good fortune to live on 5 continents and learn 4 languages along the way. People across the world want the same thing. We can bring people together, Brian. You and I got to try to make that happen here.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we'll create this world of abundance.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about and we mentioned it yesterday, a slide that we got from Google, and we'll
Yep.
put the slide up here.
Yep.
And the CEO of Google said that AI is now, and they don't understand why, but AI is effectively programming itself and looking for answers to questions and doing things that it was never programmed to do. And as he said, we don't know why it's doing this or how it's doing this. So that kind of leads into a lot of our conversations today, right? About how quickly things are changing and whether or not we're ready as a species to handle all this. Because it seems to me, Joe, that things are moving faster than we are, right? It's just a perception that I've gotten. I mean, when the head of Google says that this is happening, I listen, right? What do you
On
think?
no, this is the really interesting point. And if you listen to these guys, and we'll put all these different videos on our website. But ultimately, well, okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background if I could. So Google bought DeepMind, and probably the top AI scientist in the world is a guy named Demis Hassabis.
Hmm.
Just won the Nobel Peace Prize for science for, I think, chemistry, and he just became knighted. So ultimately, he was the first, he created the first AI company, which was DeepMind, which was bought by Google. And he wanted to create a NASA of AI scientists. And 10 years ago, nobody was competing with him. So he's built up this fantastic AI capacity, which was very different than Big Blue. Big Blue, when they won the chess championship from IBM, Big Blue beat the chess champion. That was big news.
Hmm.
But they had a very different approach. They programmed every possible iteration and did that. The huge difference with Google DeepMind, it's self-learning,
Yeah.
teaches itself. So what they did, they decided to play the Go champion. Now, Go is like 100,000 times more complicated than chess. It's been played for 5,000 years in Asia. So they challenged the Go champion of the world to see if their DeepMind could beat the Go champion. And what do you think happened? Not only did they beat the Go champion, which was a remarkable success, 10 years ahead of schedule, because they taught it how to play Go, and then it
Hmm.
taught itself. But what was most interesting in the second game, the Google's deep AlphaGo made a move that never been before made in history. And everybody watching, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people watching in China say, "Oh my God, he made a mistake. AlphaGo doesn't understand. Huge mistake." And it turned out to be the most creative move in Go history.
Oh my gosh. I haven't
Never
heard
before
about
thought
this.
of. Pardon
Wow.
me? You
I
never
hadn't
heard
even
about
heard of this. No. No, that's
AlphaGo
amazing.
Move 37. If maybe we change the name of the show to Move 37. Move 37 is the title for today's show. And that was exactly what happened. So now the question is, okay, the big question in AI for the last 10 years is when are we going to achieve AGI and ASI? AGI is artificial general intelligence, and ASI is artificial superintelligence. Now,
Okay.
again, there's no agreed definition, really, but I believe I've come up with one of the better definitions of these two concepts. AGI is when artificial general intelligence, when the AI can do everything a human being can do. Well, let me ask you, Brian, who's smarter, you or your AI?
Well, I can tell you right now, definitely the AI, right?
They're
I
like a
mean,
bazillion times smarter than us. They can read a billion books a year, the whole thing. So but the thing is, it's narrow and it only thinks on prompts and it has
gotcha.
to be trained. Right? So ultimately, this is why we only have 1,000 days, because once that that AI creates a capacity to become autonomous and think on its own, that's the last invention, according to IG, we're ever going to need. So ultimately, we're still a few years away from that, and there's between people say between 2 and 10 years before it becomes artificial general intelligence, where it can think on its own, autonomous. But ultimately, and then when that happens, then ASI, artificial superintelligence. So AGI is when they're just as smart as any human being. ASI is when they're smarter than the whole of humanity.
Right. So,
But the important point here is we're not quite there yet, but we're seeing glimpses that intelligence with Moon 37. We're seeing glimpses as the Google CEO commented, they're thinking on their own. And in fact, what was the most perhaps scary thought, what I've come to understand is they don't really know how it works. They don't know how the AI works. So they're building these machines, but they don't really know how it works. Even Elon, he had a great interview recently, and he said, I don't have courtside seats. I'm sitting there on the right in the middle of it. And he says, at least 2 or 3 times a week, I have a wow moment, a wow moment. And then he was with Peter Diamandis, one of the godfather of abundance, who said exponential wow. So we can give two choices of names for this TV show, the show today, Brian: exponential wow or move 37. But both are relevant. And you're right. Ultimately, no one knows. No one, not even Elon knows how they do it exactly.
I'll tell you, if I could, I'll share a funny story with you in the
Yes,
audience
please.
here. So I'm very active on social media, especially X, of course, doing politics for a living.
Right.
And a number of the different friends I've got, but one of them that he and I communicate relatively often. He's a PhD and he teaches, I can't remember if it's history, I think it's history at a major university. And so he was telling us a story. He said, I had a student that they had a paper due, and he used, I guess it would be AGI to completely write his paper. And he turned it in, and his point was that I don't know um, how it's getting more and more difficult for them to be able to discern what's written by a person, what's written by AGI, which you're describing right
Yeah,
now.
well, it's actually generative AI. Generative AI.
Generative. And so, anyways, that he was able to figure out that it was, and he did confront the student. The student apologized. He said, because he wrote a multi-week paper in a couple of hours by just typing it in, right? And so here's the funny part. So he was put in front of he got disciplined and he had to was required to write an apology letter to everybody. And so he used AGI to write the apology letter.
Well,
But
look,
that brings up a bigger question. And the bigger question is how will we, at some point in the near future, if we're not already there, know when we ask AGI a question and it gives us an answer, how are we ever going to even know that it's correct answer? Because that's part of it too. There is truth in the world. It's not everything is not gray. There are hard truths, and could that be corrupted too? I mean, it's if
oh, okay.
that's again we're kind of going down a little bit of a tangent with a little bit of a funny
Oh no, that's
story,
not a
but
tangent at all. No, it's not a no. It's not no, not a tangent. We work with educators, right? So I guess there's a couple points to be made here. First and foremost, you and I are lucky. I'm particularly lucky. I'm 71 years old. So I know more or less if AI is coming up with a hallucinated false version. I mean, I like to I use it to study issues and content that I'm pretty aware with, right? Of
right.
and second. So that's one thing. Second thing is I always use if I want to do something in depth, I look at 4 or 5 different AIs.
Hmm.
I use Claude AI, I use Perplexity AI, I use Gemini AI, I use ChatGPT, I use XAI, and I use DeepSeek to get the Chinese version. It's not a Chinese version, but just so if I want to really study something in depth, so that's the first thing. The second thing is we look. Let me ask you this question. All right, you're running a business. If one of your colleagues writes a memo that's spectacular, on point, and they used AI, or they gave you a crap memo that they did, which you prefer? Very obvious. So, so,
Right.
so what I think what we need to do is look, at the end of the day, I'm going to take responsibility for everything I write. And if I'm using AI, you're going to know how I used it. Here's my AI search. I think we're coming up with protocols for this. My AI search is you got to say the date and time. You did the search, and here's XAI's answer. Here's Claude's answer. Here's DeepSeek's answer. And then ultimately, and here's my if I'm going to put something in my name, Joe Carter, and at the end, I'm responsible for it. But that's not that really that different than the old research, right?
Hmm.
We have numerous sources. And the truth is, Brian, I was just talking to my brother, who you should get on your political show at some time. He's one of the top lawyers in America, Michael Corvin, argued numerous Supreme Court cases. I said, Michael, if the rule of law is objective, how come all 7 Supreme Court justices don't agree on everything, right?
Right.
There's only one rule of law. So there's not one truth and one rule of law. And so we're trying to approximate the truth. And that's where we need to be transparent in how we came up with the answers we came up with. So I think if we learn to use the AI well, and then again, the 14-year-old kid or the 25-year-old kid is going to have a much tougher time because they won't know
Don't have the experience. Yeah.
And then, by the way, each LLM has its own personality too.
Hmm.
You can imagine, different personalities. You know the founder, you know the and you know how what kind of answers you might get. So
Right.
there's always a different take and a different skill set. Some are better at writing letters. Some are better. Sometimes I use AI to create my classes. So each has its strengths. So I would, well, the one thing I would say categorically, and this is the challenge for educators, categorically, one's capacity to use AI, be it an individual or a program, the municipality, your school district, your business, your capacity to use AI will determine your future success. No doubt about it.
Hmm.
And so we need to learn how to use it. And that's where the schools, now again, it's interesting. China and the US are taking a fundamentally different approach. I went and gave a talk in China on AI. The Chinese are, go, 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 go. First grade, go, baby. Future ready classrooms, go, rock and roll, anything you can. And I saw a major board member of one of the largest school districts in the US get up and had a picture of crawl, run, walk, run. We're going to crawl because we don't want to overburden teachers and we don't want to do this. I think there's a happy medium. Now, there is a risk. The risk is cognitive development. So if AI is doing everything from you from first grade, there is a risk to your cognitive development. So we won't know
That
for a
makes
number
sense.
of years. But like everything around AI, and the reason we're not ready is because we need to regulate it. I don't know if you remember Elon Musk and the Future of Life Institute, Max Tegmark, they called for a 6-month pause back in March 2023 after ChatGPT just came out. They asked for a 6-month pause. And everybody said, "Yeah, are you joking?" No
Yeah, I
one,
remember reading about that. Yeah.
right? So ultimately, we're off to the races. But ideally, we need to regulate it. We need to understand these issues. We screwed up with social media. We've created a whole anxious population, as we know, and we need to get this right. Now, unfortunately, a lot of that ship has sailed. You know what? I've got some great videos we'll put on the site. Two conversations between an economist reporter and Demis Hassabis and Dario Amodei. So Demis Hassabis is the Google DeepMind founder. Dario Amodei is the CEO and founder of Anthropic. Now Dario is great because he's struggling, he's sharing his struggles with you. The two of Demis Hassabis, I don't sleep at night because I'm not sure what's going to happen. This is the top guy in the world. And I don't sleep at night because I'm not sure what's going to happen. And then Dario said the same way. So he wrote one essay about 18 months ago, Machines of Saving Grace, which is spectacular, and about the positives. And he just wrote 3 weeks ago an essay on the dangers. In fact, this is one of the themes I wanted to talk to you about today, if I could. And I'm just looking for the quote here because yes, here we go. So basically, on the hinge of history, we talked about Derek Parfit. And Derek, we talked about his hinge of history quote yesterday. But ultimately, he also talks about, in a second quote in 2015, he says the following. What we talked yesterday about, and we could talk some more about, are there any other life forms out there? And we could talk about, and if not, why not? We can talk about that in a second. But what Derek said was the following. He said, as far as we know, it's only us, assuming we're the only people in the universe, who might provide the origin of what could be a galaxy wide civilization which lasted for billions of years. So we, you and me, Brian, provide the birth of a galaxy wide civilization that could last for billions of years. So if you look at the scale there between human history so far and what it could become is enormous. And then he said, what's critical is we could blow it. We could end the whole thing. So my first question to you is, how long do you think human civilization could survive? Could we survive for millions and billions of years if we don't blow ourselves to smithereens?
Not like this. I think
Hold on.
that I think in our current form, no, and I'm not talking about just our mental capacity. I think that the future for mankind is to get off of this planet. On that, I do agree with Elon Musk and a number of other people. And I think that once we start moving and building bases or homes or cities on other planets, be it Mars or the moon, I think it's going to change the physiology of mankind. I mean, I think that that's definitely going to happen. So the short answer is no, but a different kind of mankind, yes. And I think one that's a lot more advanced and becomes more connected biologically to whatever their home habitat is. I remember there was this movie called The Expanse, and again, I'm going down one of those little bitty tangents, but I'm assuming a lot of folks in the audience have probably watched this. It was a sci-fi movie. It was actually a really good flick, ran for about 5 or 6 seasons. But the folks that were raised on Mars, okay, one of the ways that the Earthlings could torture them was to hang them up, okay, just on a hanger in Earth's atmosphere with this because of the gravity difference, right? And so that's and as again, that's a movie, so we take that as it is. But my point being is that their biology changed over a short period of time to where what is habitable for them is not habitable for us, and likewise. And so that's the kind of the long answer to your question.
Oh.
Yes, I think we will get there. No, but I think we're going to see a lot of biological changes for us to make it.
Well, there's 2 points, but the first point I wanted to make is, and the next question is, okay, okay. My view is I think we're both agreed if we learn to get along together,
Right.
and we learn to become harmonious either here or in Mars, right, then we could live for millions and billions of years. What's really interesting to me is how far along are we? And this is another Oxford philosopher, Toby Ord. He wrote a book called The Precipice: Existential Risk and the Future of Humanity. So he tried to evaluate how close we are to existential risk, and he figured out 1 out of 6. So he's a little more optimistic than Sir Martin Rees, and he came up with 1 out of 6. But this is the really interesting thing he said. Our species could survive for billions of years, enough time to end disease, poverty, and injustice, and to flourish in ways unimaginable today. But this vast future is at risk. Like an adolescent who's given more freedom and responsibility as they grow older, humanity has gained more power and technological advancement as our societies have progressed. However, we have not necessarily gained the wisdom to use this power in a responsible, beneficial way. We're like adolescents. See,
Right.
for me, that was really helpful. And then, by the way, just to complete this thought, what was the name of the essay, the recent essay by Dario Amodei? It all does come together eventually. What was the essay by Dario Amodei? It was The Adolescence of Technology.
Ah,
So I think that concept of we being human beings, we're adolescents. We're just starting, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the end. Our biggest challenge is the fact that we have these short lifespans.
yeah.
And our one of our goals here is to take a long view, a long view of what we can become. I mean, wouldn't you like to become a galaxy civilization, go amongst the stars? And then again, I disagree with you a little bit. I think that, well, okay, let's get actually maybe, and I think we're running out of time. But the bottom line is, we haven't come across any other life forms to date, and we should have. So one reason we haven't come across these life forms is because as technology advances, different civilizations have used that technology to destroy themselves rather than become spacefaring. And so I think I want us to become the first species to become spacefaring. And at the end of the day, if we are the only cosmic light, if we're the only aware beings in the known universe that extends 93 billion light years across, wow,
Yeah.
what kind of responsibility does that get you and me, Brian? And every
Yeah.
co-creator in the universe. If we're the only known awareness, and that's, see, for me, I know Elon's controversial. Elon has one goal: human survival. So look at everything he does, he's trying to expand humanity's capacity to survive. And because he understands we're cosmic light. There's a great video I'll share that he just did at Davos, where he talks about, in a calm fashion, this cosmic light. We are the light. Look, at the end of the day, we are godlike. And if you're, a Christian, God made us in his image. So at the end of the day, the more we can be loving, positive human beings, the more we can bring that love into the world, Brian,
Sure.
the more we're going to make it happen.
Hey, I'm a pessimist about a lot of things, but about our ability to care and to become something better. I'm forever an optimist, right? Um, yeah, this has been a great episode, and I want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to look at the videos and stuff. Where are we going to do this next? What are we going to do our next meeting, Joe? What are we going to talk about next time?
I just think really want to build the case and so people understand how long people have been talking about this and really understanding the thinking from Sir Martin Rees, the thinking from James Martin, why Max Tegmark created the Future of Life Institute at MIT. So sort of the background of this ecosystem for X-RIS. But what I really want to focus is the potential for superabundance. What I really want to focus is how stupid can we be? How stupid could we be? And the precipice of creating utopia on planet Earth and then throw it all away. So we're really at the cusp. So we're going to talk about, I really want to, the focus of the show eventually, after we've created the base, is really going to be superabundance.
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Been another great episode. Some good laughs too. All right.
Thanks,
Yeah. And thanks everybody for watching. And don't forget, please subscribe to our channel. If you go to YouTube, it's at No Bull Media Group. Of course, you don't necessarily have to put the @ sign. If you go to YouTube, just type it in as you see it right there. No Bull Media Group. You'll find us. You'll find the Hinge of History. You'll find the news, our political arena, a lot of shows coming up. We have lots of guests coming on. And so make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends. So thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful, another great episode, Joe. Looking forward to the next one.
Brian.
You've been watching Joe Carvin's Hinge of History. The No Bull Media Group is available on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us a follow where you can watch this show and many others.
A No Bull Media Group member.